John, the book How to Win Friends and Influence People was written in 1936. Did you know this book's got 15 million copies sold? It's been translated to more than 30 different languages. This is something that I read when I was in college for the first time, and it was a little mind-blowing. It was the first time I had read something that a book that actually told you how to read the book, where it talks about reading and rereading and highlighting, and I was so impressed by it that we had to have a review on it.
Yeah, very impactful for both of us, 'cause I think we read it around the same time. A little known fact of Rich Hoffman, you also have one of the original books, maybe not 1936, but 1937 edition, which is extremely impressive
I do.
to have in your collection. The first thing I want to touch on, Rich, is the title. I think a lot of people are misled a little bit by the title, How to Win Friends and Influence People, as a little bit of a trickster book. How do I trick people? And the reality is influence is leadership. And in a lot of ways, this book talks about leadership capabilities and traits that leaders need to have in order to get the best out of their people and influence them in the right direction, but also in some cases, how to avoid conflict. So I'm very curious as to some of your big takeaways from the book and look forward to bantering back and forth.
When this book was written, it was written around a time when books were about the heart of a person and where they should be coming from. And that was somewhere up to about 1950 or so, from what I've read. And since 1950, a lot of books are how to look like something instead of how to be like something. This is really an age-old classic, and not, to your point, about how to manipulate. It's an age-old classic about who you want to become and how to demonstrate that you are that person. I think it can be used to manipulate if you don't actually feel some of the ways that this is recommending that you behave. I do think it can be a dangerous book in that respect. And there are even spoofs written on this. Did you know there's a book, How to Lose Friends and Infuriate People? Did you know that's an actual printed book?
Your point's a good point, though, Rich, which is, hey, let's not get too excited. The book was written a long time ago. The issue is that the principles of this book that was written a long time ago, almost 100 years ago,
Yes.
still apply and are
Yeah.
so relevant today that we want to talk about them.
Yes.
It's not rocket science, this thing called winning friends and influencing people, but there's some really core strategies.
Well, one of the principles that I'd pull out of it is it's simply articulated or illustrated by, when you look at a photo of a group of people, who do you look for first?
Yourself.
Yourself, of course you do. You are the most important person in your own life. And the core of the book is really written to look at everything from the other person's perspective, that they are the most important person in their life. And they say in the book that the sweetest sounding word in any language is your own name.
Yep.
And to use someone's name is a really endearing thing that will make one more likable. There are things like that. It's a little bit of a tactic that can be overused. And salespeople have caught on to it. Hey, the first time you meet somebody, use their first name 3 times. Hey, John, good to meet you, John. How's it going today, John? That's a little bit weird. Any tactic overused is going to be identified as a tactic, and it's going to be disingenuous. At the end of the day, if we can use people's first names a little bit more often, it does make us a little bit more likable to the people we're communicating with, John.
Yeah. And you know what? 2 things on this. First of all, the first person you look at in a picture is yourself. However, awkwardly enough, the person you hate hearing back is yourself on a recording or anything like that. You hear your voice like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I sound like that. And so when you are meeting with people and you know that they are the most important persons themselves, letting them speak and drawing them into interactions with you where they are sharing things about themselves makes them feel good as well, above and beyond the name. I will share that I do like the name thing, though, still, as long as it's not awkward, because it is also a way to help remember names. When you meet people for the first time and you want to remember their name, the more frequently you use their name and interact with them in that initial encounter, the better chances are that you remember the name. So I still use that one a little bit, hopefully not too awkward in the salesman way, but I do love that strategy. But at the end of the day, there's one golden rule of how to win friends and influence people. And it's the golden rule that's lasted the test of time and still to this day is the most important rule out there, which is treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat them with kindness, show them that you're interested in what they have going on, right? And be genuinely interested in what's happening, not just fake interested, because people can smell that out too.
Agreed. And you had said having people talk about themselves and being genuinely interested in them. I've written down one of the things that stands out to me in the book is an easy way to be a good conversationalist. Because I know I don't feel like I'm all that good with small talk. And one of the ways that I feel like I can be a good conversationalist is when I follow one of the principles in this, which is to be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves. You and I do that by nature of this podcast. I swear to you, I have become a better listener as a result of this podcast. Yep. Because the way that we do this, and it's very non-scripted, we really have to listen to what people are saying and pick things out and ask them to expand on things. And I've been able to hone some of that skill just on this very podcast. But myself and a number of people who I know would say, I'm not good at rapport building. I'm not good at small talk. And I'm one of those people. The way that I can get better at it is if I remember, that doesn't mean I need to do a lot of talking. Yep. I can just be genuinely interested. Now, this is a non-manipulative part. Don't ask questions if you're not actually interested. Be genuinely interested, be a good listener, and ask questions and some follow-up questions. People love to talk about themselves. They say in the book, talk to a man about himself and he'll listen for hours. And that's really true, that people love talking to people who are genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back, Rich, we had a guest on recently, Ted Ma. And what we talked about was how to be a mentor. The number one key to being a mentor in someone's professional and or business life is be genuinely interested in who they are and what they're trying to accomplish, and encourage them to go achieve those results. Have that growth mindset, that positive outlook to help someone, to inspire them to go achieve something. That is what a mentor is. That's also how you win friends and influence people in the proper direction to achieve the results, even for themselves, not for yourself, but for them and what they want to achieve. I think that's one of the key things in this book is when you see someone who needs that genuine support and you can provide that to them in a very short instance. Rich, you're one of those guys. I've seen you have interactions over our 20, 30 years of knowing each other where your interaction with them may have been 10 minutes or 30 minutes, but they consider you as somebody so important and impactful in their lives because of how genuinely concerned you were with them or how you affected them through the conversation. Whereas meanwhile, some people spend tons of time together, but they genuinely don't care about each other. They genuinely don't help each other. They don't treat each other with kindness. And they're kind of like, yeah, that's Rich or that's John, yeah, whatever. And so the quality of time you spend with somebody is better than the quantity.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And in that quality time, one of the things is in the book, admitting when you're wrong. And if you're wrong, just admit it and admit it enthusiastically instead of feeling like you have to defend a position, just demonstrating openness. You can be wrong.
Fail, yeah.
Yes, Aaron Deal, former podcast guest. So that's one of the things I have had to learn. I think I'm actually really good at it now. I find myself being very open and contradicting myself in a conversation because when new information comes in, I feel like I can just pivot and change opinions. What I say now doesn't need to be what I back up later. And it's not this squishy thing. It's hard to describe what I'm trying to explain. It's not that whatever I say you can't believe because it might change in a moment. It's having a strong opinion until new information comes in and my opinion may change. And that would be okay if it changes. And I don't feel the need to defend every opinion I have must be right to the nth degree.
Yep.
And I'm open to being influenced even on things I'm start off with an opinion on. And that hasn't always been that way. I frankly think it's made me more likable through the years is that I haven't been so opinionated, sticking to my guns on every topic.
So quickly, because one of the ways that the book talks about dealing with adversaries and learning how to negotiate with somebody who may be an adversary is the last thing you want to do is come in so strongly opinionated on your position because you haven't heard their position yet. And if you are going in with an adversary, somebody that maybe you feel is going to be on the opposite side of you on a specific issue, we find that in the workplace a lot of times. The one way to do it is you kill them with kindness. Rich, please tell me your position on these issues and your justification for them, because I genuinely would like to understand and see it from your viewpoint, not criticizing their viewpoint. No, that's crap, Rich. That's not the way you do that. You're supposed to do it this way, not jumping to that conclusion, but just genuinely listening, trying to find the value, genuinely trying to find the value in what they're bringing to the table and complement those positives. Rich, what you said, and when you first started talking about that and that's fantastic. I really agree with that stuff. That's really good. And we actually talked about this recently with somebody. I can't remember who it was. You may be able to remind me, where we talked about putting some time in there before you even articulate your opinion, because your opinion may be different, which is, hey, Rich, you brought some really good points today. I really want to consider. Can I have till tomorrow to come back to you and really just let this digest in? Because I think you've made some really good points here today. And you don't pick a side. You don't pick your side, or you almost become a mediator in your conversation with an adversary. It gets them completely off their guard, but you know what? It gives you the opportunity to maybe change your opinion, which is exactly what you were talking about. So when you deal with an adversary, you need to have that ability to win them over as a friend, find that win-win solution, have more of a collaborative, we're on the same side of the table, let's work through this, versus Rich. How many times have we seen two adversaries go at it at work and they just put their walls up and they just go at it and the outcome is nothing good?
One of the things I found is actually putting forward, hey, I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'd love to hear more about why you feel that way, is to put that out there instead of what I used to do is just probe. And sometimes I would probe and ask questions in an effort to find faulty logic in the other person's part so that I could persuade them. And I've stopped doing that. And now it's literally saying, hey, John, I'm on the other side of that one. I literally don't understand why you feel that way, because I feel so differently. And I'm happy to tell you about why I feel that way. But can you talk more about that? It's okay to put your truth forward that you don't agree, and then just listen with openness, genuinely seeking to understand, because I really don't understand because I feel so differently, instead of seeking for a counterpoint and an opportunity to convince or persuade.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Dale Carnegie would agree with your approach, but he might. Because the one thing you do in that situation, Rich, which is part of your calling card as well, is you're transparent. And the moment you're not transparent and people know you to be transparent, you're no longer genuine.
Yes.
They know you don't agree with their position. You're just not saying it. You're hiding it and waiting until tomorrow morning. And now they feel like you're duping them. And that doesn't work.
And it reduces trust to do that.
Absolutely.
And people get skeptical. Hey, why do you think that, John? How does that work? Have you considered this? And the whole time they're getting the feeling that I don't agree, instead of me just saying, hey, I'm not sure I agree and I'd like to hear more.
Rich, I want to not counter. It's not a counter. Like, I have a different opinion, but there's one side of how to win friends and influence people you brought up, but there's also the other side, which is you mentioned when you make a mistake, admit it and be vulnerable and put yourself out there and fail. Yeah. You know what? I made a mistake, and that gets people to trust and earn respect for you and everything else. But there's also when people make mistakes around you. And in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie talks about kill them with encouragement, not criticism. Not kill them, excuse me. Feed them with encouragement, not kill them with criticism. Meaning someone made a mistake. They know they made a mistake. The last thing they need to hear from their boss or their leader is, hey, Rich, you made a mistake. That was stupid. Right? What they need is that encouragement. Hey, Rich, don't worry about it. Let's get together. Let's pick this up. We'll figure this out. We'll work on this together. When you jump in the trenches with somebody who's made a mistake and they know you have their back, think about the people who have done that to you in your life and the amount of respect and trust you've earned from them. If ever they're in the trenches, you're jumping in with them. That's the type of leader you want to be.
And when someone has made a mistake, coming back to the book, when somebody has made a mistake and there's a criticism to be had, the recommendation from the book is, if you must find fault, begin with praise and honest appreciation. There's something that's praiseworthy in it. So this happens in our business where somebody will come and they'll present a solution for a particular thing. And maybe it just doesn't seem like the right way to go, or we've already tried that. I'll do my best at trying to put myself in their shoes and appreciating where they are. Here's what that looks like, John. Hey, I know you took a lot of time to put this together, and I appreciate how organized you are in putting this together. And it took a lot to get to this point. There are a couple of things in it that I think we may need to pivot on. And here's what they are. But there's something about acknowledging with honest, sincere appreciation where they are first. And
TSP, right?
Yeah, truthful, specific, positive feedback from Michael Alasso, former podcast guest. Beginning with praise and honest appreciation. It cannot be false flattery. People will see through that right away. And by the way, if they don't, you have your own conscience to deal with.
Yeah. Rich, entrepreneurs listening to this is the key that Dale Carnegie talks about. He calls it follow this rule to succeed in business. As a leader, and he doesn't use this specific word. This is a word I learned many years later after reading this book, so I didn't catch it the first time, but it's you need to be a servant leader. You got to be in the service of others. If you help others achieve and get what they want and what they need, you will achieve things in business you never imagined. And that could be your colleagues, it could be your leaders, it could be the people you lead, it could be your customers, it could be your vendors. It doesn't matter. If you help people and you have a servant leader mentality where the needs of others are more important than your needs, that's how you win friends and influence people.